Navigating Intellectual Property. Hello, in this presentation entitled Navigating Intellectual Property, we shall provide learners with a comprehensive understanding of intellectual property rights and strategies for effectively navigating the complex landscape of IP law. Intellectual property encompasses a broad range of intangible assets, including patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets, each with its own set of legal principles and protections. At the end of this presentation, you will be able to identify the main characteristics of copyright principles and licensing, indicate the different licensing models towards their implications on the usage, sharing, and modification. Unit 1. Navigating Intellectual Property. Subsection 1.1 Introduction. 1.1 Introduction. What is intellectual property? Intellectual property refers to a broad category of intangible assets owned by an individual or company. These assets are legally protected from unauthorized use or implementation. An intangible asset is one that has no physical form. The concept of intellectual property is based on the idea that the creations of human intellect should receive the same legal protection as physical property or tangible assets. Most developed economies have laws in place to safeguard both types of property. Understanding intellectual property. Intellectual property refers to a category of intangible assets, meaning they cannot be physically held and do not have a tangible presence. These assets are the result of human creativity and can take various forms, including artwork, logos, symbols, brand names, and designs. Companies are highly focused on identifying and safeguarding their intellectual property due to its significant value in today's knowledge-driven economy. Creating intellectual property involves substantial investments in intellectual effort and skilled labor. As a result, organizations and individuals make significant investments to ensure that these assets are not exploited by others without permission. Maximizing the value of intellectual property and preventing unauthorized use is a key responsibility for any company. Although intangible, intellectual property can be more valuable than physical assets and can represent a significant competitive advantage. For this reason, it is closely protected by the companies that own it. What are the four main types of intellectual property? The four primary types of intellectual property are patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. Who owns intellectual property? Typically, the creator of a work is considered its owner. However, ownership can vary depending on the type of intellectual property and the specific circumstances. For example, if a work is created for an employer, the employer generally owns the intellectual property. Ownership rights can also be transferred to other parties. What is the purpose of intellectual property? Intellectual property serves various purposes, including branding, marketing, and protecting assets that provide a competitive edge. When you create an original literary, scientific, and artistic work, such as poems, articles, films, songs, or sculptures, you are protected by copyright. Nobody apart from you has the right to make the work public or reproduce it. In EU countries, copyright protects your intellectual property until 70 years after your death or 70 years after the death of the last surviving author in the case of a work of joint authorship. Outside of the EU, in any country which signed the Berne Convention, the duration of copyright protection can vary, but it lasts until at least 50 years after the author's death. Copyright protection grants you the following exclusive rights. Economic rights, guaranteeing you have control over your work and remuneration for its use through selling or licensing. Moral rights, usually protecting your rights to claim authorship and to refuse a modification of your work. How to obtain copyright protection. If you create literary, scientific, and artistic work, you automatically have copyright protection, which starts from the moment you create your work, so you don't need to go through any formal application process. However, you may need to advise other people that you are the author of that work by attaching a copyright notice to your work, such as the all rights reserved text or the symbol, together with the year the work was created, registering your copyright via a dedicated service provider, which can be useful to prove the existence of your work at a certain point in time, Copyright provides two sets of rights. Economic rights. The economic rights protect the author's economic interests and allow the author to earn a profit by direct or indirect exploitation of a work. Moral rights. The moral rights protect the creator's creative integrity and reputation as expressed through a work. Related rights. There are three kinds of related rights or neighboring rights. Rights of performers, actors, musicians, singers, dancers, or generally people who perform in their performances. Rights of producers of sound recordings, also called phonograms, in their recordings, cassette recordings, compact discs, etc., and rights of broadcasting organizations in their radio and television programs and in internet broadcasts such as podcasts. Distinction between copyright and related rights. Copyright and related rights protect works of different categories of people. Copyright protects works of authors, whereas related rights are rights granted to a few categories of people for their important role in communicating and disseminating some types of works to the public. Example: for a song, copyright safeguards the composer's music and the writer's lyrics. Related rights apply to 1. The performances of the musicians and singers who perform the song. 2. The producer's sound recording that includes the song. And 3. The broadcast program produced by the organization featuring the song. Synopsis. Intellectual property is an umbrella term for a set of intangible assets or assets that aren't physical in nature. Intellectual property is owned and legally protected from outside use or implementation by a person or company without consent. It can consist of many types of assets, including trademarks, patents, and copyrights. Intellectual property infringement occurs when a third party engages in the unauthorized use of the asset. Legal protections for most intellectual property expire after some time, but they can last forever for others. There is a distinction between copyright and related rights. Thank you for your attention.